Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. The Guillaume Maxwell Jeffrey Epstein investigation is far from over. And if any of the co-conspirators thought that they could rest easily, they were mistaken. AP has a new report out tonight that is explaining how the prosecution is trying to keep documents from the defense because, well, more indictments are on the way. And we've talked about that for quite some time here on the podcast, right? One of the main things I've been talking about is RICO. And you can't have a RICO crime if it's only a crime of one. We know this wasn't a crime of one. We know that there are multiple people involved, especially the core four, Indike and Khan. And we know that there are other people who also helped facilitate all of this. So we know that this investigation is far from over, right? And we know that there are certainly sealed indictments for other people who were involved with Jeffrey Epstein and Guillaume Maxwell. Well, tonight, the AP goes into that a little bit more. So let's dive into this article and see what the AP has to say. Headline: Prosecutors seek secrecy as Jeffrey Epstein probe continues. This article was authored by Larry Neumeister. An investigation of financier, pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein's sexual abuse of girls and women remains active, leading prosecutors Tuesday to try to prevent lawyers for his incarcerated ex-girlfriend, co-conspirator, fellow child abuser, general all-around scumbag, bipedal serpent, from learning too much about it until 2 months before her criminal trial next summer. Folks, something is a-brewing. Something is going on. Allison Moen Company in the SDNY have something up their sleeve. More indictments are imminent. That's all that this could mean, from where I'm sitting anyway. There's no way that they would be playing it this close to the vest if they didn't have more coming. They don't want anyone to be tipped off. They don't want people running. They don't want anybody to get rid of documents, whatever it may be. They don't want anybody tipped off. So, the prosecutors are holding all of this material, or at least attempting to hold all of this material, until 2 months before the criminal trial starts. So the trial is in July. So May is when they're looking to give her these documents. Boy, oh boy. We have quite the ride ahead of us, folks. And remember, my plan is to be in New York. I have it all locked in. I'm going to be in New York for the whole month of the trial. And I'm going to, at the very least, attempt to get into the courtroom to cover it right there on site and report back to you folks, but we'll see how it goes. Either way, I most definitely will be in New York, inside that courtroom or outside of it, for this trial. Manhattan prosecutors told a judge in a letter that they want to delay giving material from dozens of victims cooperating with the government who will not testify at trial to lawyers for British socialite Guillaume Maxwell. Socialite, huh? Fellow child abuser, you mean? Fellow scumbag and a bipedal serpent. The active probe leaves open the possibility of additional arrests. It's not even a possibility at this point. It is almost a guarantee. There is no way in hell that the only person that gets arrested when all the dust settles is Guillaume Maxwell. If you think she's going out like that, you are being very naive. She is definitely going to cooperate if she thinks that's a way for her to get a lighter sentence or for her to avoid a harsher penalty. What do you think? She's going to sit on it? She's not built for this life. She's not from the streets. She doesn't have any real loyalty to these people, and she understands that she's been burned. So now she's swinging in the wind, twisting in the wind, and she's on her own. And the rest of the people that were around them helping facilitate this shit, like Darren Indike and Richard Kahn and the rest of the Core Four, all of these people, I really, really hope that they're having a fitful night's rest, because their day is coming, folks. What have I said? What is 2020? You know what it is. 2020 is the year that all of these predators turn into the prey. And we are certainly on course for that to continue to happen, especially when we keep getting reports like this and we keep getting little tidbits about this trial, about the criminal portion of this case. And when you put them all together, the picture that it paints is one that says, without a doubt in my opinion, that more people are about to be fitted for bracelets and more people are going to be enjoying some state-provided bologna sandwiches. Maxwell, 58, has been held without bail since her July arrest on charges that she recruited teenage girls for Epstein to abuse in the mid-90s and sometimes joined the abuse. She has pleaded not guilty. And again, remember, this is just what the original charges were, right? For this period of time. This is where the prosecution thought that they'd have the most chance to keep her behind bars as they continue to expand their investigation. So, like I said, I call them placeholder charges. And that's exactly what they were, in my opinion. And we see it now. As this case expands and we see that there's going to be more arrests and there's more people that are going to be held to account here, well, you're going to see those few charges that we have right now, you're going to see those grow as if they were a chia pet that has just been watered. Prosecutors want to delay turning materials from some victims over to the defense until 8 weeks before a trial scheduled for July. And again, they want to hold all of the advantages, right? The prosecution doesn't want to tip their hand at all. They don't want to give the defense any idea about what's coming. So they don't want to have to turn over this documentation early and let these people formulate a game plan where they can find a loophole or try and thrash through the evidence. They want to make sure it's as close to the time of trial as possible. And guess what? Usually, it gives me the skeeves the way the federal government works in federal cases. But if the federal government is ever going to wield its considerable and great power against citizens of the United States, or in her case, a citizen of multiple places, I guess, if they were ever going to flex their muscles, this is the time to do it. With people like this. A message-seeking comment was left with lawyers for Maxwell. Prosecutors said defense lawyers have indicated they will oppose the secrecy request. Oh, there's no doubt. All the money they're getting paid by Guillaume Maxwell, expect them to leap through every single hoop possible. They're not going to leave one stone unturned. That's why the case has to be ironclad. That's why the prosecution has to make sure all of their ducks are in a row. They can't leave these slithering serpents any room to slither out of the trap. In its letter, prosecutors said revealing 40 pages of photographs and 40 pages of documents related to Epstein survivors who were harmed after the time spanned by the charges against Maxwell could jeopardize the government's ongoing investigation and scare other survivors from cooperating. So that's a pretty loaded paragraph there. So they don't want to turn over these 40 pages of documents and these 40 pages of photographs because these survivors, they could have been harmed after the time that was they could have been harmed and abused after the initial time period where the charges were slapped on her. So that means that there are other charges that could be coming down the pipe against Guillaume Maxwell that aren't based on these original placeholder charges. I know it's all kind of confusing, but basically, in layman's terms, they don't want to ruin the rest of these indictments by providing and furnishing Guillaume Maxwell's defense team with this documentation too early. And another thing, like he just says here, is they don't want survivors to be scared to come forward if they think they're going to be outed. the ones that aren't even testifying, if they feel like they're going to be outed and they don't want their names in public or whatever, why would they come forward if prosecution is turning over this documentation to the bipedal serpent's lawyers? So the prosecutors have a really good shot at getting this to pass here. I think that the judge, it'll be Judge Nathan. I think that she is going to, she'll rule in the prosecution's favor here, and she will keep these documents from Guillaume Maxwell's attorneys until the 8-week mark. That's just my guess. Prosecutors said charges against Maxwell pertain to illegal acts that occurred between 1994 and 1997. But the indictment emerged from a wider probe that went beyond that period. So, they're basically outlining for the judge here and for the court that even though the only charges we see right now are from the time period in question of 1994 through 1997, that the court could expect and should expect more indictments coming from a different period of time that wasn't the original period that we're discussing here, 94 to 97. So in other words, crimes that occurred throughout the years. As part of the broader probe, investigators have interviewed dozens of survivors who were sexually abused by Epstein after 1997 and obtained a limited number of sensitive documents and photographs, including school pictures and bank and travel records, they said. So that's all really like delicate information, right? That's the kind of stuff you don't want the defense to have. You really don't want them to know who these accusers are until it's time for the trial. Because again, you don't want them to go through what they went through the first time around. What, we want guys like Dershowitz digging through their trash again? We want them going through their social media posts and calling them whores and hookers because they kissed a guy, or they're a drug addict because they smoked some weed? Hell no. And it looks like the prosecution learned from their first rodeo here. Prosecutors said they don't plan to offer the materials as evidence at trial and wanted to turn them over to the defense at the same time as materials related to other non-testifying witnesses. So basically what they're doing is they're building their case, right? What do I always talk about? Context and putting meat on the bone. Not only do we do that here, but that's how one of these investigations happens. You got to put everything into context and you got to put some meat on the bone. And that's what they're doing here. And they're going to build the case and show the blueprint and have the whole entire scenario mapped out. So when the trial comes and it's time to go, Allison Moe can absolutely eviscerate this bipedal serpent and her hired guns. To do otherwise, prosecutors said, would risk interfering with the ongoing investigation. For now, prosecutors said they wanted to keep the scope of their probe secret, in part to encourage other survivors to cooperate. Yeah, of course they want to keep it secret. That's part of it. They want to make sure that other survivors come forward, but they don't want to tip their hand and give a tell to other people who are under investigation. They don't want nobody running. You know, they have enough problems, right? The last thing they need is to have people on the lam here. So they did it the smart way, and it's a little different than how they usually go about it, right? Going after the head of the snake first. When it comes to criminal organizations, they usually go after the underlings, the lower hanging fruit. But they knew the risk with Guillaume Maxwell splitting. And I said it when it first happened about New Hampshire, and then we added the context about Montreal, and well, there you have it. In my opinion, that is why they swooped her up when they did, to make sure she didn't make that move. Epstein, 66, killed himself, allegedly, in August 2019 while he was housed at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, a federal lockup adjacent to Manhattan federal courthouses. At the time, he faced federal sex trafficking charges and was held without bail a month after his arrest. So, folks, basically what this article is telling us is that the indictments are far from over. We're going to see a superseded indictment for Maxwell, in my opinion. And the core four, those ladies are all in big trouble. Indike and Khan, those guys shouldn't be sleeping well. And I'm sure there's a bevy of other people that the prosecutors are looking at right now. If you were part of Epstein's inner circle, if you were part of facilitating this sex trafficking ring, if you were scheduling girls, you were helping them get to and fro, and you were picking them up, whatever it may be, if your fingerprints are left all over this enterprise, you and your friends are all in big, big trouble. That's what this article is saying. We don't even know the scope of this investigation yet, folks. Not truly. Not truly. Anyone who says they do is lying besides those prosecutors. Maybe the lawyers do too, but we don't know the true scope of this, and we don't know what those seal indictments have in store for us. But what I think, and from where I'm sitting, there is no doubt that Nadia Marcinkova, Adriana Ross, Leslie Groff, Sarah Kellen Vickers, Darren Indyke, and Richard Kahn are all going to be getting a nice visit by a court official. It is without a doubt at this point. We keep hearing of how the case has been expanded, how the investigation keeps expanding, and we know that those people that I just named were very important the first time around, and if they didn't get involved, if they weren't involved with that non-prosecution agreement, that all of them probably would have been indicted then. So now the government gets a chance to fix their mistake. And from all signs, folks, it sure looks like the core four plus Indyke and Kahn are in for quite the long few months. If you'd like to contact me, you could do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links to this article can be found in the description box. All right, everybody, I hope you all have a great day.